questions?
Richard, I'd like you to, because I follow the Wired and clearly this whole issue of is our patent system broken with respect to the pace of, in particular, technological innovation, and it has been a hot topic in the press lately. So could you give us the flip side of clearly we can understand the value of intellectual property and patenting, but what's the counter argument of patent trolls and defensive patents, and
Yes.
What's the other side of the story?
Yes. Let me use as an example a case that Jim Oliver and I, and we did not plan this, or it's not a planned question, but this is a case that we worked on a couple years ago on earmuffs, which are called, by the company that holds a lot of patents on those, ear warmers. There's a company called 180s that was founded by some MBAs, and they filed patents on everything having to do with ear warmers, including design that, to our view, was very obvious and utilitarian as opposed to ornamental, and yet they got that patent through. And they sued my client, and it was very, very expensive to defend the case. So are there situations where patents are where there's overreaching, where people are just, what patents really should be about is inventions. So what it should be about is patenting inventions, but what you have instead is you have people who are inventing patents, which is kind of backwards. And anytime that you have a high value on something, you're going to have people struggling to bring that thing into the market. And right now, patents have a high value, so people are struggling to create patents, even without really creating much in the way of technology that's useful. Generally, patents, as I guess a lot of things, they go in cycles, the climate for patents. And the climate for the last 30 years has been ascending and strengthening of patents. And now I think the courts are starting to cut back on that, and the Congress is too. So one of the areas that gets the most criticism is business methods, and it's a gray area. I mean, when does something cross over between software and hardware? It could be a pretty gray area, and there's a lot of really good technology. I do a lot of work on software for medical records management, which is basically database management and ensuring accuracy of records and communication between different systems, between doctors and hospitals and insurers, for example. And some of that's very sophisticated technology, and we're doing very well at getting patents on those kind of things. But one of the things that Congress did in the America Invents Act is they said for business method inventions that really don't have anything to do with technology, if these are the kind of things you could do on the back of a napkin, then let's have a second level of review before we allow that patent to issue. So they're getting an increased scrutiny. Another area where patents have actually been outlawed is in one area is actually in cloning, and I have seen and been involved in some patents that involve that kind of technology. It's pretty amazing the kinds of things that can be done in the lab. But cloning of humans, that is actually prohibited by the law. And another area is tax systems. So if you develop a way to minimize tax as a business method, that will no longer be patentable. And who do you think complained the most about patents on ways of minimizing taxes? I'm sorry? Exactly. Yeah, the people that are involved in doing taxes, they don't want to get sued for patent infringement. They're very offended by that. So they campaigned, they lobbied with Congress, and Congress said we're not going to allow patents on tax methods, which I think was a good result. I personally, and again, this is just speaking for myself personally, I think patents should have to do with technology. That's what Congress meant back in 1787 when it said they wanted to promote the useful arts. Useful arts meaning technology. Other questions?
Especially in the software sector, we see a lot of companies that try to protect their products, like Microsoft, for example. And on the other hand, there's a trend that companies use open source and have these great communities with bright people that work on just a perfect product for free. And I was wondering where you see this trend going, if you think that software in the future will only be like this open source style, or if companies still will try to protect their IP.
I personally don't know too much about open source, but I have heard from experts, namely in-house counsel in open source companies, that open source does not mean free. So the people who make Linux, that doesn't mean that you get their support for free. You might be able to use their code, you might be able to build on it, but if you want support, if you want anything that's going to be customized, you might have to pay for that. As for Microsoft, they spend about, this is as of a few years ago, they were spending about $100 million a year on getting patents, and they were spending another $100 million a year on defending against patent infringement cases. They're a big target for trolls. So they're kind of, they're getting hit from both sides. They need to have patents to protect their technology, and it's basically all software, right? All software patents. And they want to be able to protect it. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who are programming in their spare room or their basement or their garage, and they're getting patents, and then they're suing Microsoft. So it's a kind of a tough world for them. People don't invent pharmaceuticals very much in their basement, so pharmaceutical companies don't get sued by trolls. So the challenge with open source is, how do you raise money? If you can't make money on the product, how do you support the development? I use Wikipedia a lot, and I get a lot of good information from there. I don't cite it because I don't consider it to really be a primary, well-documented source of information, but I get a lot of good information from there. And the last few times I've been on Wikipedia, and I've been there a lot the last couple days, I'm getting this banner that comes up that says, "We got 6 million users and only 150 people. We could use some money. Well, can you give us a donation?" So I was just thinking about that on my drive over here on Highway 30 today. I think that we'll probably start seeing ads. This is just my own guess. We'll probably start seeing ads on Wikipedia just like we see on Facebook, because they got to pay for it somehow. And they are doing a lot of good development.